Welcome everyone to the February meeting of the Public Works Committee. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Ms. Bramer, Mr. McGowan on the second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We'll move right into the action agenda. We'll start with Parks and Recreation, Railroad. Page 2, resolution request, Warren County, South Warren Snowmobile Club agreement for bikeway use, rationale agreement renewal. Chair will entertain a motion to bring this to the floor for discussion. Mr. McGowan, Mr. Leggett on the second. What do we have here? Kevin? Order, I'm sorry,
This is
Tim?
actually a 3-year agreement. This allows the South Warren Snowmobile Club to use a portion of the bikeway starting from Magic Forest, or whatever it's called now, Berry Pond Road, down to Fort George. This is an agreement we do with them every 3 years. Connect the Kingsbury Barnstormers Trail to Washington County.
All right. Any questions? Andrea?
I have just a quick question. I remember last year we talked about the snowmobiles actually do some damage.
Correct.
Do you put mats out?
This year I tried moving it off the actual blacktop, put it on the grass. We only opened one day so far this year, and I haven't opened since. Not enough adequate snow.
But we've got it now.
No.
No, we don't.
It's gone.
Or we're hogging it all up north?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's down to
I'm okay.
pavement already in one day.
Yeah, you got more up there.
Just a second. Mr. Merlino?
Just a comment. The physical damage is not done by the snowmobilers. It's done by the snowmobilers. That's where most of the work is done. Because I just don't want to get them to wrap it to snowmobilers, make the damage. It's the groomer that travels across that with the thing that flattens it and keeps it neat. We've tried to change the metal studs on that stuff, but still didn't help.
Ms. Bramer?
I had a question about what Supervisor Hogan asked about, but is that true? That it's
No,
not
I'm
the
lying to you.
snowmobilers? I thought it was
No, it's not the snowmobiles, it's the groomer tractor. It's like a tank.
Yeah, but aren't those on the bottom of the snowmobiles as well?
No.
That drive
not
the...
anymore, no.
No,
Those studs have been outlawed for a long time.
Talking about the carbides? You're saying you thought it was the carbides on the snowmobiles?
Sure.
Yeah, but it's been outlawed. They don't have that much.
But the bottom line is the process, the whole thing doesn't damage the bike trail, right?
Mr.
Yeah,
Hagel?
just to go back to this agreement is they need permission from Tim or I to get on that bike path, and we determine whether or not, I mean, they've been asking us all year long to get on it, and we only allowed them to go this weekend for their poker run, and that was it. We've closed it right back up again. So all winter long, they've only been on it once. So they need to seek permission from either one of us to get on it like that.
Right then. Mr. McGowan?
the damage that the bikes talk about, is it kind of really at the beginning?
Where they take turns.
The
mainly.
turns, the intersections where they gotta make a turn.
Yeah.
So what I've done on Stanton Road is an uphill turn, sharp turn onto Vinell. I took that, moved everything this year off the blacktop, put it into the 8-foot grass line, so they got up, then turn across, and it doesn't do the damage of scraping that he's talking about from the bikes.
Right.
They got teeth.
Right. No, I'm familiar with all that, but,
Okay.
and we've tried speed limits.
Oh, it's down to 15, 10 through those sections.
Do we enforce it?
Warren County Sheriff does.
I mean, that would be a good,
They do.
it's kind of like a entrapment if you ask me, but, you know.
They call and ask if it's open. If I don't, they don't get up.
Okay.
All right then, are we ready for the question then? All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution requests Warren County Northern Warren Trailblazer Snowmobile Agreement for trail use on county property. Chair will entertain a motion to bring this to the floor for consideration. Mr. Stroud, Mr. Merlino on the second. Discussion, what do we have here, Kevin?
This also is another,
Yeah.
for use. It comes behind Soil and Water, goes across the county home bridge onto our Warren County canoe access site, and it goes all the way out to the end of our property, which links up to the South Warren Trail. So it's another connector trail from South Warren and Northern Warren to meet.
Any questions for Tim on this leg of the trail? Mr. Leggett?
Yeah, thanks. On the map, it's proposed. Is this already an existing trail?
Yes.
Okay.
This one is currently open, yes.
Okay.
Clubs are in control of that.
Yeah, so when it says proposed, that's just for this resolution, or is this?
For this,
Or
right?
is
I think, yeah, I think this proposed was we didn't change the map. This is the map when we had proposed the trail a couple of years ago. I think that's what it was. It just didn't change it, but he just brought the map just to show where the trail was.
Mr. McGowan?
I have a question, it's really off of Prospect, at the backside of Prospect. We didn't get approval for one property on that? Well, it's not we, it's the
South Warren.
South Warren didn't get approval for one of the properties, and that was closed down?
Mm-hmm. It's a requirement to be a state-funded trail to have
Property approval.
property, homeowners, businesses. It's an application called Phase 2.
Someone didn't want to go with it.
They don't have to, and you can't pay for it either.
Yep.
Because then everybody would be going. So that's what it's based on.
Mr. Leggett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, we just paid Lime Timber an exorbitant amount to cross their property.
Because they entertain recreation easements only with municipality or large groups like hunting clubs or not individuals.
I don't understand the difference.
That's how it was put to me when we
They're a
asked.
private landowner, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they're the only ones that get paid, aren't they, out of our whole county system? They're the only landowner that gets paid
Correct.
for the use. Every other private landowner, and we're talking hundreds of private landowners,
Hundreds.
say, not a problem, come across, but Lime Timber, and this is the same group that's charging the county to get to their fire tower, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah, great corporate partner. Thank you.
Are we ready for the question then? All those in favor of the resolution regarding North Warren Trailblazers signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution request to amend the railroad reserve rationale, railroad repairs and emergencies. Tim?
Actually, I'll take this one.
Okay, Kevin?
We have a railroad reserve set up right now. It's the reserve for county railroad repair. In the past couple of years, we have not really put a budget into railroad because, one, we had the previous operator maintaining the railroad for us. Now that we don't have an operator and Rev Rail is going to be on the rail, I'm not necessarily saying budget money, but it would be nice if we could take the money from the license agreement, say with Rev Rail or anybody else who does anything on the railroad, and put it in this reserve so that I have some funding in case something happens along the rail corridor.
Okay, why don't we bring this to the floor first? Mr. McGowan and Mr. Merlino on the second. So what you're looking for is to have this revenue, should it occur, you would want this placed in that, we'll call it that maintenance reserve fund in your department.
That's correct.
I don't have a problem with that. Ryan, the county administrator, doesn't have a problem with that. Discussion, Mr. Wild?
Chairman, thank you. Kevin, I thought it was going to cost us some money to prepare this section of the corridor for railroad use.
It is going to cost...
Take that out of the revenue before we put it in reserve?
It is going to cost us money, but that's what's going to be reimbursed by FEMA.
That $12,500 is also something that we could pull out of the reserve in order to pay our local share.
Right.
That's all reimbursable, just so, Mr. Wild, just so you understand that. We expend it.
75% of it.
No, what I'm saying is that we expend it, then they reimburse us.
My question is, where are we expending it from prior to getting reimbursed?
We already have currently money in the reserve.
Mm.
I'm not sure exactly what that dollar figure is. Say it again?
71, I was
I
thinking.
think right now there's about $71,000 in the reserve.
That would be more of a do-from situation. In other words, we would expect that revenue, and regardless of where we achieved it, it would be a pretty automatic kind of thing.
We have an estimated cost right now of about $100,000, but once we put this out to bid, we don't know what it'll come in as. Seen that.
So what's everyone's, any more discussion on the request by Commissioner Hajos? Did I just promote you again?
I think we should change the title.
Remember that. Remember that. All right then. All those in favor of establishing this fund with this revenue signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried?
Chairman, I'm opposed to you bribing our commissioner.
On camera, right? All right, referral pending none. Page 7, New York State Grant and Aid Snowmobile funding, $69,240. Tim?
Yeah, that's the same as last year. I don't know why it didn't change, because it's based on prior year registration, but all the clubs for the total year are getting $69,240. We do 70% with the state right up front. They get their money. If they proof out through the automated system that they have enough, they get the other 30% in the spring. And right now, between the two, I put a graph together from the previous 02 all the way to now, all the different fundings between county, which gets the 90,000, and the breakdown from the state. So we get total, the clubs right now is $159,240 for all 5 clubs.
Are you offering this informational, or do you need
Just-
some sort of
nope,
action?
it's just information.
It's informational, okay.
Then the next one was Mr. Hajos, Southwind.
Mr. Hajos?
Yeah, the last item on there, as you were all aware, Southwind rail locomotive, Mike Kelly has had a coach car and an engine sitting up in North Creek for, I think, the better part of 12 years now. He had originally had a contract with, I think he received it from Upper Hudson originally, and then we had asked him to remove his equipment off the track back in 2012. He then contracted with Saratoga North Creek to keep it there for the time being, and they were working out some deal to work on those cars so they could move. They have since come up and replaced the wheels so that they can take the engine and the coach out. Issue being is they can't travel anywhere because they're the washouts that we have on the track. They could take it north, but they're not going to get very far north of the washouts in Hamilton County, and they could take it south. They're not going to get past just below our rail station. We went to court last week in Washington County and came to an agreement that once the rail was fixed, that the order would have him remove his car, or his engine and his coach car, within 10 days, and it'll be off our tracks.
Mary, anything you want to add to that report?
Nope, that was great.
Okay. So once the track is repaired, there's actually a court order now
Order being ready.
that he's agreed within that time frame. Vamos the caboose.
Vamos the caboose.
It's not a caboose, actually.
What about our caboose?
Our caboose is
Relative to these
still in
cars.
Thurman. Still in Thurman.
Is he can he flag to get it out of there, or that we're?
That's
we
what
gonna
he'll have to do. I think that'll be part of the order, because he has to flag to get it out of there.
You don't need any action on that? All right, is that?
But he's gotta wait till we repair the track.
Correct.
Which is spring. Right around the corner.
Not up there, it's
Yep.
not.
We had
Right around the
we had to
corner.
repair the tracks fairly soon, because we just entered into an agreement with Red Rail to use that portion of the track. So we are putting the package together to go out to bid for a contractor to do those repairs.
All right, I'm sorry, Andrea.
Have you gotten a commitment from FEMA yet?
I met with FEMA. They wanted a little more information. They looked at our insurance because they said if insurance would cover damage, then they would not. The only thing they would pay for is whatever our deductible may be. But I think we've gotten a ruling back from Rosenkiernan that is not covered. And FEMA has given us an indication in our meeting with them last week that it will be covered under their. And I think FEMA's good. I think as most of you towns have worked with FEMA, is they're looking to get you money, whatever way they can to make sure that you put the cost. So.
Right. Ms. Bramer.
Thanks. I just want to make sure I picked up on what you said. That so we got that letter saying we were denied, but the coverage, the insurance
Yes.
lever. But now we've also gone to Rosenkiernan and they've agreed. Rosenkiernan is our insurance.
Used to be our insurance. They were the ones
Right,
that
the last
covered the
time.
insurance policy before, or covered the.
Did,
They were the agent.
have we gone to our broker then? Broker to ask if there's any way to.
That's not the nature of our new coverage. So the coverage is for when the loss occurs.
I'm talking. This was in 2019, so it'd be under our 2019 coverage.
Right. That was Rosenkiernan. So Rosenkiernan went to NYMER and they're not covering it.
And there's no way to appeal that, or.
I wouldn't it be in our financial interest to appeal it because of the deductible.
Okay. How about under our 2020 coverage?
They wouldn't cover it.
It's still not covered.
No, because the coverage is when the incident occurs.
I'm sorry. Are our railroad properties covered now under our insurance, property
Yes.
insurance?
Yes.
You're sure? Because I thought we were before. I'm sorry. You can tell me later. I do not understand why we were not covered.
The question is, I think Ms. Bramer wants to make sure, I think we all want to make sure that our railroad is covered in terms of, I mean, I think we're covered from a liability point of view, but I think she's asking for property damage. Are we covered for property damage? And we'll get back to everybody on that. You'll send that.
We are covered for certain types of property damage, but the damage to the rail ties and the tracks themselves, the rails were not covered.
Why?
Well,
Why is that?
We'll get back. Let us get back to you.
That's common for railroad property coverage.
So we'd have to maybe buy additional coverage for that kind of property.
If they offer.
Without,
we wanted to.
without knowing enough about the market, I would assume we could buy additional coverage. I'm not sure whether it would be, if it's possible. I don't know whether it would be cost.
Right.
Yeah, right. But we can look
Okay.
into it.
If there's anything more, we'll get it out to everybody. Any information that we have on that. Ms. Bramer.
Can you give us an update on the northern portion of the railroad line going to Tahaz? What is happening with the STB proceeding?
I can't give you any information. I don't have any home on that.
I haven't heard anything new from the STB. I did talk to DEC what's today, Tuesday? I talked to them Friday. They had a change in their legal staff. So the northern proceeding, that's a House proceeding, there's the issue with the receivership versus the bankruptcy proceeding. The STB still doesn't know who they're supposed to be talking to. They've given a 30-day extension for some clarity there. Before the 30-day extension ends, there's supposedly an auction that is set up for Iowa Pacific property. We're trying to determine whether these properties are in that auction or not. I haven't gotten final word yet on what is part of that auction and what is not, or if that auction is even going to proceed in light of what's going on in court. The second issue that DEC has with the northern proceeding is Revolution Rail. Revolution Rail has put in as an interested party for the future of that line, and as such, I think would be able to comment on the interim trail use agreement that DEC entered into with Iowa Pacific. And again, the issue that STB has with that is they just don't know who they need. They know who they need to talk to at DEC, but they don't know who they need to talk to at Iowa Pacific. That's what's trying to be worked out in court. They also now have Revolution Rail as a party that they need to talk to and figuring out how that will go. I asked Revolution Rail, as we were working out the contract for them to operate on county property, whether having that contract to operate here would change their status, their interest in operating on the Tahawas piece. I haven't gotten an answer back on that yet. So that's where things appear to stand right now with the Tahawas line.
I have a question, maybe back on the FEMA. Kevin, are you hoping that some of your internal costs associated with this line are going to be able to count that as a local match on the 12.5%? In other words, the engineering costs that you've expended thus far, the public works, all of those costs.
We can try and submit for some of that. As I said, FEMA's usually good on looking to make sure that you do get funding. They do cover engineering costs. We've kept track of all of our time anyway, so I will put it as on part of our submittal and see if
Sure. And what commitment have we gotten from the state of New York? I mean, do we know? Have we received in writing that they are in fact going to participate in the local share on the state share on the local share or not?
I haven't gotten any letter or any information, but they've been in all of our FEMA meetings. In fact, we just had a meeting with FEMA last week, DPW did, to go through all of our work, and the state was there.
Right. So but I want everyone to know we have not received in writing anything from the state of New York as of this date. And I know that because the municipalities have not received anything in writing from the state of New York, those of us that had damage. Ms. Bramer.
Yeah, back on the STB thing, Ryan, have you had any further communication with the STB representative about continuing to hold on our proceeding for abandonment?
No, the last conversation I had with Fred at the STB is the one that I've reported back to this committee.
Right, okay.
Other than an email conversation about whether they were going to give a 30-day extension on the legal question, which he said they were.
Yeah, there was, County Chairman.
All right. Ms. Bramer.
The last I saw was late last week. The bankruptcy trustee was asking for an additional delay on that proceeding.
You
So it's
reported 30 days.
I thought it was more than 30 days.
So to go beyond the 30 days?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the 30-day extension, I believe, went to the 21st. So they're asking for an additional extension beyond that. Yeah, that I haven't talked to Fred yet about, but I wrote an item on my to-do list to get in touch with Fred today.
I mean, my concern is that we just continue to wait for the northern line, and I think it's gonna take a while because of the bankruptcy proceeding, tying up all of the assets. I mean, I don't know. I could be wrong, but at some point I think it might not be in our best interest to continue waiting to see what happens.
If we do our abandonment proceeding now over our 40 miles with the idea of going to an interim trail use agreement, we're on our own. DEC is not going to step out with us at this time and do that. And the reason is because they don't want to offend Essex County.
All right. Mr. McGowan.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it sounds like it's better we kind of like sit tight.
That's the advice I've been given. I mean, the board has authorized me to get going with that abandonment at the, but we've been trying to do that in a sensible way where we can get, hopefully, if that is the direction this is going to go, if there is not going to be freight on that line, I would think it's advantageous for the county not to step out alone, that we step out with the state.
And now that we have a contract with the rail company there to run some bikes on them for the summer, at least we're moving in a positive direction. It's not sitting still, and
right.
Spring is in the air. It won't be long before we'll be over there fixing things with FEMA. So, all right, thank you.
Yeah, we've got quite a bit of spring work to do. I don't understate how much work is involved in that. And the character of that work, that's not like we go in there with DPW trucks. That's a railroad improvement, and that is a different type of character, you know. All right, then, with no further discussion then, I think we could roll right into our Public Works agenda. I'll call the meeting to order. Chair will entertain a motion. Do I need to approve the minutes, or the first one is already taken care of? Okay, good. Let's move right into the action agenda. Page 2, request a new contract. What do we have here, Kevin?
This is one of our term agreement contracts that we do every year. It's with for crane services, and typically we use the crane services if we have some bridge work or heavy lifting to do. This is with Roselle East, and they've had a contract with us.
All right, Chair, I'll entertain a motion, bring this to the floor for further discussion. Then I see Ms. Hogan, Mr. Wild on the second. Further discussion? There being none, we're ready for the question. All those in favor of the new contract signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 4, request additional new contracts. Kevin?
This one is for, again, another term agreement for heavy highway construction work on our county roads. This is not our paving service. This is just in case we have an emergency or we need to call in a contractor to help us do some work. This allows us to do it. We renew it every year, and we typically put not just one contractor on it, but we pick the 3 lowest responsive bidders. And for this, there's Peckham Roads, Harrison and Burroughs, and then Kubricki, I believe, are the 3 lowest responsive bidders.
All right, let's bring this to the floor for further discussion. Mr. McGowan, Mr. Stroh on the second. So if we had a washout, these would...
We could grab, if we couldn't do it, we could grab them.
Right, okay. Mr. Leggett?
Thank you. And the 4th bidder on here, I guess they didn't make the cut on it. Were there other bidders besides these 4?
Just the 4 on the tab sheet that you see.
All right, then are we ready for the question? All those in favor of approving the additional construction services contract signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The next item is on page 11 of the agenda, and that's just to amend the 2020 budget for an insurance recovery for guide railroad that work on Reserve Road.
I'll entertain a motion to bring this to the floor. Ms. Bramer, Mr. Merlino on the second. Any discussion? We ready for the question? All those in favor of amending the budget signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Anything else for action, Kevin?
Yeah, one more thing. The last thing I have on there is to create a new position within DPW. Basically how I've explained it is I'm restructuring the engineering department. When I took over, as most of you know, I eliminated the deputy position, and I kind of added a couple new positions just to see how the department would work. Well, we've been through a year, or a little more than a year, with a couple of those positions, and I've determined that I need kind of between my senior civil engineer, who is basically acting kind of as my deputy now, I need a next level below him. So I'm looking for this engineer 2 position. One of the positions that I'm going to defund or take someone away is the environmental analyst position. I'll eventually probably remove that position. I know there was a lot of talk about me having an environmental person within my department. The fact of the matter is, the environmental work that someone's done, such as when the past environmental analyst was here, was about 10% of the work. The majority of the time we had her doing engineering work. I really need an engineer. I think with this engineering 2 position, I'm going to have a requirement as part of the job description is to have some environmental background, not a significant amount, but I reached out to Supervisor Bramer because she was very excited when I had gotten an environmental analyst. But we've also talked about it a little bit. You know, a lot of that work is geared more towards grant writing and a lot of it, like the NYSERDA grant for the charging stations. That was one of the biggest things that I had this environmental analyst do. The rest of the time, you know, she probably did a lot of engineering. She did sit on some of the committees, but I think that's geared towards more of the planning department. I think it would benefit them to have kind of more of that environmental background individual, not to say me. So right now, I'm eliminating the engineer 1 position that I had and creating this engineering 2 position. And part of the money from this position is coming also from the environmental analyst. I will come back next month with another position that I'm looking at. What I think that will, I guess I want to say, make my department whole. But I just think, as I said, the environmental analyst was good, but it's 10% of the time they're doing that environmental work. 90% of the time they're doing engineering work. And my staff, as I have now with my senior civil engineer and my engineer 1, They do a lot of the environmental work with our consultants, especially for our federal aid projects. And then in-house stuff, we kind of all pull together to do it. So that's why I'm creating this position.
Are you looking to delete the environmental position at this time?
No, I am not.
You're not looking. So you'll be going to personnel, and you'll be looking at personnel or finance to make the appropriate transfer.
Correct. Right now I'm looking to
Just create the position.
Well, I'm looking to delete the engineer 1 position, which is engineer 1 number 2 at $65,948. And then I'm taking a portion of the money from the environmental analyst position to fund the rest of the salary for this engineer 2.
Okay, does everyone understand what he's doing there? Ms. Bremer?
Thanks. I appreciate your talking to me beforehand. You know, I was excited about that position, but hopefully you can still get this person to do a little bit of the environmental side of things. But I completely appreciate you need someone focused on engineering. Where was I going with this? The other day we had a question about this particular form and whether or not this was going to actually delete the position that he is indicating is supposed to be deleted.
I think he just said delete the engineering 1 position.
Yeah, I think it's under D.
Yep,
in
I
that
see it.
form.
I just
It
want to
says-
confirm
Yep.
that is getting deleted in the table of
That's correct.
positions.
That one would be deleted.
Thank you.
So the motion would be, if one were made, the motion would be to delete the engineering 1. You need the engineering 2 position created, correct?
Correct.
As
And
part of
that-
your organization, create the engineering 2 position, the engineering 2 position to be funded from the engineering 1 position, and some amount from the environmental planning position.
The only other thing I'd like to add to this, if possible, is I didn't, and Amanda just reminded me of it, I have the creating of the position, but I would also would like, and it's not here, but I can give it to Amanda, the notice of intent to fill this position as well.
Yes. I'll make all 3 of those as a motion.
Okay, we have a motion from Supervisor Bramer relative to the proposal by Mr. Hajos. We have a second from Mr. Wild, and a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kevin, are you promoting someone, or is this engineer 1 not filled already?
The engineer 1 position that I have vacant, that was a person who was promoted through my highway manager. So that left the position vacant, and now I'm looking to fill it with an engineering 2.
Mr. Leggett?
And the job description, there's a difference between engineer 1 and engineer 2?
Yeah, the engineer 2, and I'm working on that with personnel right now. The engineer 2 position would have more responsibilities, would answer to the senior civil engineer, as would anybody in the department. They would have more responsibilities with the other staff below them, with the engineer 1. They would basically be supervising the engineer 1 and anybody below that.
Okay, so engineer 2 on the hierarchy is above the...
Above the engineer 1.
Good point. Any other questions for the Superintendent Hajos? Now I demoted you again. All right then, everyone understand the motion and what we're doing? Good. Then I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Referral pending items, referral from the Occupancy Tax Coordination Committee to consider the idea of turning over revenue obtained from the parking and county-owned parking lots in Lake George to the Village of Lake George beginning in '21 to assist with the cost of wastewater treatment plant. And I see we have Mr. Blaze, Mayor Blaze with us here. Bob, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just pass out the same, what you folks that were at the occupancy tax meeting probably got those. So I've been asked to come here from the Occupancy Tax Committee, and most of you know, I'm sure, that the village is seeking some support to be able to bring our budget, which we're working on right now because the village is on a June 1 to May 31st fiscal year. So it's important that we know how we're going to set up our bonding and our funding right now as we work on our budget. I have been communicating with Brian, and at the last occupancy tax meeting, it was discussed that perhaps the support might come from funds that are now given over to the county from the village's Beach Road parking lot, which is really not the village's Beach Road parking lot. Those of you that weren't here 4 or 5, 6 years ago, after all these years, when the county reconstructed Beach Road, they discovered that they in fact owned the land that the village's Beach Road parking lot sat on, that we had been using funds for all those years, and we struck a deal with the county that we would continue to maintain it and service it and turn over 25% of the gross proceeds of the parking lot to the county at that time. Over the years, you have a chart in the folder that shows that now we are also maintaining and collecting and enforcing the county parking lot, which is on Westbrook Road. I do understand that the only funds that might be available to be shared with the village is from the Beach Road parking lot, because the Westbrook parking lot funding is committed to support the maintenance of the Charles R. Wood Environmental Park. So at presently, 25% of the proceeds of the Beach Road parking lot has amounted to around $67,000 a year. The 2019-2020 figures that you have in front of you do not include this coming season of May, because again, we're on a different fiscal year than you folks are. So it's basically been taking in $270,000 a year, and the county share has been approximately $67,000. What I would like to see, if the committee feels that it's proper to support the treatment plant, and I certainly hope that you do. You know that I've likened the village much to the Civic Center. We're a center of some of the largest activities that Warren County hosts, and it costs the village a considerable amount of money to host those in our regular budget. I think we're very unique in the fact that we are a community of 995 people, but if all the beds are filled in 4th of July night, or 2 weeks ago during the Winter Carnival, we're a community of 16,000 people, and everything has to work. I would point out to you that our budget to support our 2 public restrooms alone is $115,000 a year to maintain them. So we have some expenses that I think that are very similar to the Civic Center, where we're an attraction. People come there. I believe that we deserve the support from the county. We generate a considerable amount of sales tax revenue and certainly a lot of occupancy tax revenue. What I would suggest is that right now the parking lot gathers about $67,000 for the county. We were looking for around $100,000. That would allow us to come in under the tax cap. Our budget right now is $152,000 over the tax cap, with the present debt service added to what we already have, which is a substantial amount of debt service. I would propose going to the village board, which I intend to do, and increasing the parking fees in the Beach Road parking lot to $3 an hour. $3 an hour will bring us in approximately $400,000 a year, which will then increase the share of what we would get or we turn over to the county, approximately $100,000. $3 an hour. I've researched it. I've called other resorts. That's not an enormous figure to pay to park in a lot that's so conveniently located as the Beach Road parking lot. That's the first place that fills every single day in the village. Myrtle Beach, as an example, their parking lot, which is downtown right next to their Skywheel, is $7 an hour, and it's metered exactly the same as the villages. So I would propose that you consider that scenario. I would say that if for some reason or another, the village board doesn't agree that we should change the local law in that parking lot to $3 an hour, then that we would have to be satisfied with the money that's now coming from the county, the 25% of what the gross receipts are at present.
Questions for the mayor? Mr. Leggett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What do you think the village board's take is on this $3 an hour proposal?
If past history is any, they usually go along with it. I think that we've been charging $3 an hour on our public docks for the last 3 years. And if there's any complaints, they come to me. And I have no problem telling them that that's an easier way of collecting the funds than putting it on the shoulders of the local residents. People come to Lake George parking meters. I have actually have a parking 101 form that I send people that come to Lake George and say that we shouldn't have parking meters at all. And I tell them why did you come to the village? A lot of them come to see the fireworks on Thursday nights. That's their admission price, $2 an hour.
If I understand this, Mayor, I think the way this is being advanced is whether the village increases the parking rate or not, our participation would be the revenue on the lot not to exceed $100,000. So that if the revenue is 67, it would be 67. If the revenue rises to 110, it would be 100, and the 10 would come to us. In other words, it would be a not to exceed $100,000. So if they choose not to increase the rate, it is what it is, 67,000. If I understand what you're saying, Mayor.
Yes. I would expect that in years to come it'll exceed the 100,000. It might even exceed it the very first year.
Mr. Straw?
Bob, increasing it to $3 an hour seems reasonable. And given the current arrangement, if I understand everything, it's a 75-25 split.
That's correct.
So increasing it to another $1 an hour, in other words, another 33%, would generate another 33%, keeping the arrangement between the village and the county the same, would generate, what, about $90,000 additional for the village?
Well, at $2 an hour, we're grossing $270,000. So I took half of that, the dollars, half of the two. Maybe I didn't use the math right then, but I would increase it to, I would think it would increase it to about $405,000, or double what we get now.
So, and that would meet your needs?
I believe that would meet our needs, and I believe that there would still be some money at the end of the year that the county would get as well.
So is that scenario that I'm still a little confused, is that scenario that we're given keeps that relationship of 75-25 with the county, or dissolves that relationship 75-25 with the county?
We'd have to draw a new contract.
And the new contract would say 100% goes to the village, even with the increase, and only if it exceeded $100,000 would the county see anything out of it.
If I could, I think the way we could draft it is say that it's 75-25, but the county's 25 is less 100,000.
You could, if you want to. We could continue to pay the county as we have, and you could obviously turn around and give the village a check back, but I'm not sure the way the county wants to set it up. We're obviously happy with it, no matter which way you want to do it.
Well, it's just that I wanted to make clear that if we kept the current arrangement of 75-25 and increased the parking lot to $3 an hour, that relationship would not be enough for the village?
No. Not in my opinion. We incidentally are replacing, these are just expenses that, you know, other communities don't have. We're having to replace almost all of our pay stations this year with new pay stations. The company we were doing business with is going bankrupt and aren't available. And so we've researched it. We went out to bid and we're replacing all, which is going to be a lot friendlier because they're all going to take credit cards now. That's the positive part of it, but then we're going to get less from every dollar now. We're going to have to obviously pay credit card fees and so forth. So there's going to be more expenses attached to it. But no, I don't believe that would cover the need. I'm not certain, but certainly after a year or two we would know, and I'd be agreeable to writing a contract on a shorter term to see how that works out.
Thank you. Mr. Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two things. Would there be a sunset clause to this sharing in 2049? I don't expect to be around in 2049. Would that be the plan?
Yes.
And in terms of the pay stations, Mr. Mayor, I just share some of the things that I've experienced in my travels. More and more cities, I've seen on the West Coast of South Florida, you don't need a pay station. You do it with your phone. And you can actually tell it, and I had to rent a car. I told it what the rental car license plate number was, and I did it right then and there. I didn't need to go to a pay station.
That technology will be in place this summer in the village.
But you still need to have the pay station?
Yes. Yeah. You can go on you're going to be able to go on your phone now, no matter where you are, out on the cruise ship, because it's coming in an hour late, which we hear. And you're going to be able to pay the meter from your phone. Yep.
You just forget the pay station? You just do it all electronically?
No, you can't. I wouldn't. No.
Any other questions for the mayor?
I wasn't aware of that technology, to be honest with you, but I still know there's a lot of people that appreciate the meters and the convenience and getting that slip and putting it on your windshield. That's a key thing. I don't know how you'd enforce it. It's all done on
I don't know how they enforce it either.
Yeah.
They seem to be able to get away with it, and they do it in such a way that I felt compelled that I should probably do that instead of not do it.
Andrea?
It defeats.
I think this is rather elegant to the problem, and I support this. I just wonder if there any value in discussing other avenues of funding for this endeavor for Lake George. Is this contingent on us not also providing funding through other sources? And I don't mean to be mean-spirited, I'm just saying, you know, how do we make sure that we're not going to come back and ask for our tax money for this also?
Well, nothing would prevent anyone from coming back and asking for anything at any time, but I think that in terms of the request, this request and what we're doing is going to be memorialized into an agreement, and that agreement is going to have to be approved by the board.
But it's being presented to this committee as in lieu of OCTAX.
Yes, the source of the funding would come from parking, that's correct. Mr. Weil?
Chairman, thank you. Kevin, does this come out of your budget?
No.
Ms.
I'm
Bramer?
just curious why I was here at this committee.
We own the park.
We own the parking lot.
Ms. Bramer?
My concern was about misdirecting money from the other parking lot or the parking meters along the road that are supposed to be used for the Wood Park environmental fund to maintain that entire park, but it sounds like that's not. The beach road is completely separate from that conservation easement agreement, so I think this is an elegant solution. I think we should go forward with it. And as far as the parking fees, I mean, your village is the one that is maintaining it, and you know what the market will bear, so I'm going to defer to your judgment on what to propose to the village board for the cost.
So it's always been a good solution for the village. If we didn't have parking meters, they take in about $850,000 a year. You can imagine what the tax rate would be inside the village. And the money's coming from the visitors. It's coming from the people that are responsible for us having the services that we need to get. No other community has to have 3 sets of public restrooms. No other community has to put on free concerts every night. No other community wants to do fireworks. No other community adds 16 police officers or public safety officers in the summer. We need to do that to make sure that people are safe and healthy, so we put that burden on the people, the tourists that come. And of course the residents, they think that's ultimately fair.
Now I'll open it up to the floor. I'll start with supervisors that are not part of the committee, and then I'll go to the public. Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to comment on that technology. They use it in Albany.
Yeah.
Every parking spot, you just download an app, do it on your phone, and you don't know what happens.
Yeah, we've been
You
6
gotta go to a
months.
booth.
We've been 6 months setting that up, but it'll be in place the minute we put the pay stations out.
Any other supervisor? Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I heard 2049 mentioned, but I thought this was 10 years.
What my suggestion was, 10 years. What I planned on doing is putting money into a capital reserve, debt reserve fund, so that at the end of 10 years, we'll have enough, the village, to replace this $100,000, theoretically, and that's what we're going to do. We've done all we can to get under the budget. We've eliminated a person in DPW. We've eliminated a person at the wastewater treatment plant. But the wastewater treatment plant, the new plant alone, our engineers, Chazen, is telling us that our operating and maintenance costs are going to be about $70,000 more than what we have now. So that's even beyond the debt service.
So we're talking 10 years on our commitment. That's what I'm hearing.
That's what I was asking for.
And not to exceed $100,000 a year, which would be a total commitment at maximum of $1 million, if my math is correct. Just any other supervisor in the audience? We have got some citizenry that have been very patient. I'd like to turn to Mr. Whitehead.
Municipalities have the obligation to properly dispose of sewage, and they charge their users for that cost. If this board feels that it's appropriate to use county money for the Lake George Village sewer users, then they should proportionally consider doing the same for Queensbury and Glens Falls. By proportionally the same, you're probably talking about trying to find $1 million or so. I hope that the representatives from Glens Falls and Queensbury would consider that. Furthermore, the gracious offer to increase parking fees, people like myself, from $2 to $3 an hour, would end up generating not only more money that they want to take from the county, but more money for themselves. So they to the math, it would end up being about another $100,000, which is magically what you're seeking. So, my suggestion to consider, the users of these systems do pay for it now, should pay for it now. If you want to go ahead and subsidize one set of people in the county, then you ought to consider subsidizing all sewage costs, in my opinion. Thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Hogan.
I'd like to make the argument that this does put the onus on the users of this. We're talking 900 and some odd people off-season, but in-season 16,000. Those people are parking in these parking lots. They are the users of the system. As far as the parking fees for people like you and I think the trolley is a lovely alternative to paying those parking fees. And again, I think that
Mr. Weil.
Chairman, thank you. Are we going to increase the fees at Westbrook also? Who controls that?
You
We get a
control
percentage of this, right?
No.
This
Westbrook
committee
parking lot
controls
is a
Westbrook
county
parking
parking lot.
So would we increase the fees, the county lot also?
Mr. Hadros.
Could increase the fees. That would be the decision made by this committee if that's what you'd want to do.
I don't wanna take money away from the village by competing with them on an hour for parking. To me,
Wouldn't it be
would make sense that we would.
confusing? Won't it be confusing?
It's $2 an hour now. The county
They're both the same, right?
County parking lot is $2.
I would say that, I would think that we wanna make them the same, to create, stop any confusion.
They're not really competing lots,
No.
Mr. Well. The county parking lot is filled generally with people that are going to the Million Dollar Beach, or they're going to the Dog Beach, and it's filled early in the morning by some even employees of the steamboat company. And then predominantly when you have an event at Wood Park. I wouldn't think, and I'm not worried about it personally, that lot taking anything away from ours. But still, that's a county decision. That's a county decision.
That's what it is.
Yeah, I just asked the Commissioner, Ryan did, what Westbrook takes in. He says his sense is around $60,000 gross, so a 33% increase in Westbrook would be.
Well, it'd be another $30,000.
But,
Going to two
I
to
mean,
three.
we're assuming that the occupancy is the same. So all of these numbers extrapolate, are assuming the same occupancy on the parking. But, Andrea?
Just remind me, is the Westbrook, is the entirety of the business for that going into
As of now, yes.
and is it meeting the need?
Yes. A couple years ago, we had looked at separating Westbrook Road, as most of you recall, used to be on either side of the brook. We moved Westbrook Road in its entirety on the south side of the brook, which then Supervisor Dickinson put in meters along Westbrook Road. He's allowed to do that. Based on highway law, any municipality can put meters along, any road, including a county road. We approved that. The town of Lake George is not part of the conservation easement, so any money that Mr. Dickinson or Supervisor Dickinson collects, that's the town's money. As far as the other lot, the other side of Westbrook, we were originally supposed to turn that into a parking lot, a parcel, not actually part of county right-of-way or highway right-of-way. It has yet to be done to turn into a parcel. We had assumed it was already completed. It has not been, so that money that comes in for the Westbrook parking lot should go as part of the maintenance of both the south parcel as well as the Charles Harwood Park.
And the Vernon College meeting?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
From this committee, I've just been told it will go to finance. From this committee, any action we take will then go over to finance. So, what's the pleasure of the committee at this stage? Do you wish to advance this or not? Mr. Merlino?
I think we should talk about it now, and in 2 meetings, we'll have to go to finance, and we talked about it again. But I think we should just send it there and, let it go through. I think it's the easiest way, instead of taking more tax money, just, this is a cleaner way, I think. After 10 years, as long as it's 10 years, and then we can go back to 10 years from now, a lot of us will be here, a lot of you guys will be here.
Not a
go back to
chance.
them.
Mr. Stroud, was that a second that I see on?
Yeah.
On you? There's a second for Mr. Stroud. And from the committee, further discussion? Are we ready for the question then? All those in favor of advancing this, approving this and advancing it signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Wow. I know. How fast can you get through it?
I'll try.
All right, I'll ask the Commissioner, I'm promoting him again, to go through the road construction program as quickly as possible, if he could.
I'm actually going to go, there's two parts of this. I want to hit on the update and assault reduction initiative first. A week ago, the chairman of the committee and I met with Eric Seib from the fund. They may have some funding to help us get a salt brine making equipment within the county. Nothing's been nailed down yet, and we're trying to decide whether we have a mobile unit or whether we have stationary units throughout the county. The mobile unit we're looking at is about $100,000. The stationary units would be approximately $25,000 apiece. The issue with the stationary units that if other towns want to piggyback on with this SALT initiative, we'd need some type of tanker truck to move this around the county. So we're looking more, I think I'm sold more on having the mobile unit, but I'm looking to get the cost, that there's no cost to the county, that either the fund and or other fund sources can pay for this. I know that Chris Belden still has some money left over from last year for the SALT initiative. So there may be a possibility that we can use that funding as well. And then if some of the towns want to jump on board, if we haven't received all the funding in its entirety, that maybe the towns will chip in to supplement a portion of it as well.
We're talking about a county-wide program.
County-wide program,
At least
that's
one
correct.
county.
Yep.
Yeah. McGowan?
Oh, yeah, I really kind of excited hearing that, and the 100,000 doesn't seem out of range. I guess my question would be is that's one size. Are there different sizes?
There are different sizes, but it's also a matter of being able to put, say, the mobile one is a one-size unit. It makes approximately 6,000 gallons of brine per hour. So what would take place is if we got the mobile unit, I have 18,000 gallons worth of tanks. I would make my brine, fill my tanks up, and then if this unit, we would train the towns on who would join in on this, and then they could take the unit to their facility. They could make their own brine, fill their tanks, and then it can go on to the next town to be used there. Again, I think this is, I'm going to do kind of a cost analysis between having the stationary plants and having this mobile unit. But again, this unit, typically you would use what's called solar salt, which is a pure salt. There'd typically be no residuals left over. If I was to use white salt in either one of these, we'd always have some waste from the brine making that we'd have to dispose of. For me, I have a couple different operations like my Tony pit where we put wood chips and other material in there. That's where I would dispose of mine. But again, I think the mobile unit is, right now it looks like a better option. But I'm going to do a cost analysis and bring it back to the committee. But we were just trying to nail down funding first with the fund. The Lake George Park Commission has gotten involved with it a little bit as well. And again, planning still has some money left over last year from salt equipment also.
Ms. Brammer?
This is not really related, but on the same kind of idea of our, some people were getting together about the Compost Initiative, and a lot of the towns are talking about how they need some sort of tub grinder that we could, like a similar type of thing, a mobile unit that we could take around to each of the towns and let them use it to grind up their stuff and then have like good clean compost available. Okay, this is all very much in concept, but it's the same kind of concept that we purchase something that all of our municipalities can use and benefit from around the county.
Just to go back to add on to that, we have right now a vac excavator that Soil and Water got a grant for a couple years ago. Vac excavator we use to clean out all our catch basins and pipes, and the towns all use it as well. They've all been trained on it to use it. I think the town of Warrensburg has used it probably more than anybody else. But it's up for any town to be able to use. As far as the tub grinder, we looked at them. They are a pricey piece of equipment. As far as composting, if there's some grant funding available to be able to get that. Right now, we have a contractor, I think it's Sears, or a division of Dick Sears, who has a tub grinder who will come to every town and grind the material at a cost.
But what's the cost benefit? That's what I'd like to know, because there is some DEC grant money out there right now for purchasing equipment. I think it's a 50% match.
Okay.
So we would have to come up with money. But at some point, how much are we spending to lease this thing from Sears, who I'm hearing they don't always come?
We don't lease. They come in and do it.
Oh,
We don't do anything except load the
They
machine.
just come in under contract. But we'll get some numbers. We'll look at something, Mr. Simpson.
I was going to say, as a town that would utilize those services, I really would much rather contract with a company for that service. I don't want to be responsible for training my employees to run that equipment. It's a huge expense. I've seen an operation, the maintenance, what's better this is one that we've looked at
numerous times, once out of the contract, do it when you need it, then they're out of there. It's not your labor because of the liability.
I think any of you that have ideas like this sets the stage for a shared services application to the state of New York. So, see Andrew smiling over there.
Let's just look at it.
So but we'll do the pros and the cons of the different approaches, and we'll be back to committee on that once Kevin gets to his conclusion. Mr. Weil.
Thank you. Just briefly, Mr. Chairman. Kevin, I think last year, didn't we get some money to do these live edge piles?
We did. That's part of the money from Chris Belden Planning that received.
We could almost get the same money for this brine also. For the salt
We
reduction?
think so. As I said, Ron and I met with Eric Sy and Chris Nowitzki, the waterkeeper and from the fund. And they said there's some money available. They didn't give us a number, so that there's some portion of money available there, and then if Chris still has money left over from last year, that might be enough to get us a piece of equipment. If not, maybe it's 5,000 chip in from each of the towns. I mean, to me, and we had talked about that in the meeting, I think the entire county, they've always been focused around the lake. I think we should be focused to do this in the entire county. There's Lake Luzerne, there's Brant Lake. I mean, it's
City of Glens Falls.
We're still waiting for our live edge piles. It's the second winter weekend.
So we need to move on. I don't want to hold everyone too late, but we've got a highway program we need to get into. Mr. McGowan?
Yes, one of my questions I wanted to ask is, how long can you store that, after
brine.
you make the brine?
You can store it for quite a long time. And
So
then
you can
just
get
have to-
pods, to fill up,
Tanks.
for every tanks at every station. I'm just thinking that, if the call comes in, everybody needs brine,
Yeah, you'll just have to agitate it every once in a while or mix it
Yeah.
to make sure that the salt solution stays mixed.
And the other thing is, it's Rick Sears that does the
Rick
tum
Sears.
grinding. I went to school with him. I know the business, and let me tell you, all right, the cost to maintain one of those machines and runs, all right, it's basically one guy that comes on that thing and grinds. No, he gives us a fair price.
All right, the last thing I had on the committee is the road projects for this year. As most of you know, I went to budget this past year and asked for $4.2 million for my roads. I only received $3 million for my roads. What I'm handing out right now is kind of a spreadsheet that basically says I have 244 miles worth of roads. And of those 244 miles worth of roads, if you were to look on the left-hand side of the page and the money that I would be seeking,
Kevin, lane mile or
244 center line miles of road.
Center line.
Yep. So, again, looking at this spreadsheet, right now, if I was to fix every single road within the county, that's all 244 miles, to get them all up to a rating of a 10, which is a brand new road, it would cost me approximately $39 million. I'm not asking for $39 million today. I'm just trying to show you that that's where I'm at today. If you wanted to just give me CHIPS funding, you can look at the next two columns over for 5 years and 10 years. My cost would increase because we would not be capturing some of those roads that may fall from a 7 to a 6 or a 6 to a 5. If you go down the line and look at the next column or the next row, that would be $3 million. And again, over a 5 and 10 year period. At a 5 year period, you'll see that I remain pretty much even. At a 10 year period, I'm still losing out. And then you can go down the line to the $4 and $5 million, and you can see that somewhere between $4 and $5 million a year would actually start to get improvement in far as repairs of our roads. I know most of you were here last year, except Supervisor Bruno, and saw the presentation that I gave as far as how we evaluate our roads. When I started here in 2008, there was no evaluation of our roads. I think we were just, hey, that road needs to be painted black, and I think that was the term that they used, so they'd go out and put an overlay on it. I had asked the then superintendent, Lamy, as well as the deputy, who was Jeff Tennyson at the time, if I could start doing pavement evaluations every year, just to kind of show an annual report of what we were going through in our roads. At that time, most of you know, we were not doing too well. I think we were in a recession around 2008-9. We weren't getting anything more in our budget except CHIPS money. And we kept falling behind. In the last couple of years, I want to thank the committee and thank the budget officer. We were able to get more money, and we're slowly improving, but again, if we don't maintain that anywhere between $4 and $5 million range, we're still going to fall behind. So what I'm asking for, I guess, today is hopefully to restore the $1.2 million that I had asked for last year during budget, and if you're generous, I do have other road projects that I would like to get included into this year as well.
Yeah, before we get into the discussion, Frank, if I could ask you, Chairman Thomas, if I could ask you to put your previous hat on as budget officer, and I see the new budget officer sitting right next to you. What the plan was to shift how much money from the fund balance if the sales tax came in as expected, or is in the blue? There wasn't a dollar?
County funding up to about $3 million total for CHIPS. How much fund balance?
Okay.
You won't know that until
You're looking for how much more than what's budgeted, Kevin, at a minimum?
At a minimum, I would request the $1.2 million that I had put in for budget last year. Again, you know, if there's a couple more roads, I do have a couple more roads. I'll give an example. Glen Athol Road has been a road that I've been reconstructing over the last 3 years. I have a half a mile left of that road. It's approximately $300,000. It'd be nice to finish that road, and then from here on out, doing the maintaining or preservation of our roads, I'll keep that road in that type of shape for another 10 years before I have to put any more significant amount of money in it. I mean, the bottom line is, I always round it off to 250 miles of roads. I should be doing 25 miles of road a year, and we've been averaging 12, 13, 14, 15 miles of road a year, and it's just not going to cut it.
Supervisor Schrock.
I think what you're saying, Kevin, is, you correct me if I'm wrong, if we don't make the investment now, we're going to be deeper in the hole later.
We are.
You're saying 1.2 million is what you asked for in the budget. Are you saying you've gotten, I mean, you had to have gotten something.
I asked for 4.2 million in the budget, and as Frank just said, we received 3 million.
And that's only CHIPS money from the state?
No, it's not. The CHIPS money that we receive to the county every year is approximately 1.65 million for CHIPS. We receive another 200 and maybe 10,000 from Pave New York. And we were receiving, I'm sorry, it's 370 for Pave New York, and another 230,000 for extreme winter recovery. Last year, we didn't expect to receive the extreme winter recovery. We did. It wasn't until probably June or July that we got notification that we were receiving it. The governor initially took it out of his budget, and then he put it back in as a supplemental. This year, there is no money in for extreme winter recovery. I'm hoping that it gets put back into this year. And to add on to that, Advocacy Day is coming up next Wednesday, and I would really love any supervisor and or your highway superintendents to join me down at the Capitol for Advocacy Day so we can request or ask for more money. And we're going to take a bus down if anybody would like to ride down.
Ryan, maybe I could ask you your thoughts on this.
Well, I don't recall what we appropriated this time last year. I want to say it was around 800,000. Was it more than that, Kevin?
Yeah, I think total budget last year was in the $4.2, $4.3 million range.
Yeah, I certainly, when we do the multi-year forecast, we plan $4 million a year. So the $1.2 million right now would get you to the $4 million, and you've requested the $1.2 million, and then there's a possibility that you could add another $230,000 if we get the extreme recovery. We would come back to the board to amend the budget and add that into the program. But I think the point is you got to know how big the program is going to be before you go out competitively to do the roads.
Yeah, I mean, I'm ready to put the bids out right now for the roads. They're actually finishing up all the bid forms today to go to Julie and advertise for this. You know, I don't, if I don't have the extra 1.2 million, then I probably wouldn't add that as part of the bid. But again, I could have them just do all the bids and then see where we come in with the bids. You know, each year we put this out, and you, I think most of you saw in my response to the budget analysis, there are funds that were carried over from last year. We expect to use those funds. I didn't bring the transfer yet. I will bring it next month. And that's going to transfer some of that money that was left over from last year, sprinkle them into some of the projects that we had this year with the final estimates, and then put it towards some, I guess I want to say not newer projects, projects that we had set up for last year. So there is some money coming from there as well. But again, I've been a proponent of trying to stay ahead of these roads. You know, now that I'm going out to a contractor and having the contractor do the work, we will spend the money. The contractors will get the work done in this year. I don't foresee them not getting any of it done unless we have some significant weather issues. But this will allow my guys to do much more maintenance, and that's what's going to keep this plan sort of moving forward and staying ahead of our roads.
There's also a connection between wear and tear on your equipment. There's also a relationship with salt. There's connectivity with improved roads right across the board here. I don't see the advantage of waiting, but in any event, though, Ms. Bramer?
No, I'm thinking based off of what the county administrator said, if we have another $1 million projected that we were going to spend this year, spend $1 million out of general fund?
Mr. Weil?
Chairman, thank you. I'm in total support of what Kevin's trying to do. What I don't quite understand right now is what the number should be. Right now, we have a significant fund balance. Some may say we have an adequate fund balance. But it's reasonable to expect that maybe 3, 4, 5 years, somewhere in the relatively near future, the economy is going to turn. And we're going to need some money to maintain the county. And it'll probably come out of Kevin's budget in terms of what we do in the future, which will put us further behind in terms of what Kevin's trying to do. So what I'd like to do is maybe have a more detailed financial analysis to say, is it 1.2, is it 4.2, is it 5, is it maybe 6, and what does that do for us over the next 5 or 6 years, and how does it position us to handle a downturn in terms of our revenues and what we need to do. And having solid roads just helps reinforce why people want to come up here from a tourism standpoint.
I hear you. I mean, another way to think about that, though, if I might, is that we could do the 1 million as Ms. Bramer was discussing, and Ryan, as the minimum, and then come back with the analysis you're talking about to see if there's how much more beyond that we want to do at this point in time. And I think the idea on this was that to wait to see how the revenue picture looked. We did finish up 2 or 3% on the sales tax going into the end of the year, and January came in good. We'll have to see going forward with some of the issues that are out there, but that's normally, if we're going to envelope out and do more, this is the time when we would tell him, you know, put it in the queue and get it done, you know. And that's the other thing. The longer we wait, the more you push our process out of 2020, and that's the other thing to keep in mind.
And what Kevin's basically saying is the budget that we have today, which is in a good year, isn't adequate. So when it's not a good year, it's going to be even worse than adequate.
Right.
Move forward. So that's my point. So let's get ahead of this.
Let's hear from the budget officer, Mr. Garrity.
I think blow up a little bit until you know what the governor's going to do based on Medicaid expense. You could lose $3.5 million just like that. I understand we got to take care of the roads, but before I jump and commit to $1 million today, I'd want to see where that's going to end up in the next 2 months. But I'm only one person. I just don't like seeing going in here and spending when we don't We have an unknown. The unknown is he gonna raid our sales tax? I understand about roads, we'll continue to work towards the roads. I mean, I think we'll do a better job, contract paving, than what we did before, because I think we wasted 10 years worth of money on roads because they weren't done properly, they were redone several times. I think once we start doing it with contractors, we'll be in much better shape. But I'm just cautioning you, slow up on adding in until we know exactly where it's gonna happen on the state level. If a month, I don't know if a month and a half will hurt us.
Well, the state budget, you could be talking,
Talking April 1st.
well, or beyond, but let's say if it's an on-time budget, it would be April. Let me ask Kevin, what would that do to your 2020?
Well, as I said earlier.
Can you put the roads in and then
I can-
deduct them later?
I can put all the roads out to bid.
Okay,
And that's what I can do, and
Okay.
including any of the extra roads that would have
Okay.
another $1.2 million.
Sure.
We just don't have to award those right yet, and we can award it wait and see.
That would buy, that might buy a little bit of time in the process so that our budget officer might get a better view of how, if at all, we're going to be affected by the state budget. So that would seem like a reasonable approach to me anyway. I don't know, what's the sentiment of the board?
I agree that, you can put these out to bid, and there's nothing saying you have to award. And you can award some based on what you've got now. And as you stated, wait and see, and make a determination on the other ones that you're going to award, even if you needed to put something in the RFP or whatever, RFQ, that stated, this may not award until such and such a date. I don't know if you...
The other part of the upside is you're going to get a better price because they're going to have more work that they're bidding on. Kevin?
That's the part I want to add on is if I put the projects out to bid, we've grouped these projects together in locations. I'll give an example. I think there's maybe 4 roads in Bolton. There's 3 roads in another town. Last year we awarded 2 different contractors to do this work. If I put this out to bid, now I have to separate those couple roads that let's say the town of Bolton, in the budget I have now only has 2 roads. With the $1.2 million extra, they would have 4 roads. I'm trying to group them together because that'll be a better price for us from the contractor as well. Whereas the contractor doesn't have to leave the town of Bolton to do the work. He can stay there for the summer and do that work in that area. I'll get a better price. If I separate them all now, I think the price will go up on each one of the projects. But again, I can still put it out to bid that way.
The ones that would be on the chopping block, are they all in
They're
far
scattered all around.
Yeah, that sounds like a reasonable approach to me. I don't know, what's the sentiment of the board? Is there any sense that that's how we should proceed? All those in favor, maybe we should have a resolution because we're going to be committing some staff time to this in going out to bid, so.
They do it anyway. So
You do it anyway? Okay, so is that the sentiment of the board without objection, that we do this? And that buys Mr. Garrity a little bit of time so that he can...
And I'd like to, some help with a financial analysis. I'm not sure quite how to do that. It's pretty complicated because we have roads in different states of repair and need. And
Why don't you send a full report out? We've got a full report on that, Mike. We'll send you a full report out on that.
I saw something from Kevin, but
Well,
it's
and that's-
how to evaluate
Can
it.
you email that out, Kevin?
I can, but it's kind of what I put this
Yeah, this is summary.
together for, and it shows you the different states of repairs that we would do to our roads. That's the second column over. To go to Mike's point, if I do something for the next 5 years or 3 years, and then, all of a sudden we're in a recession, I can take as much money as you could give me. As I said before, the contractors will get the work done in a year. If it was my crew, I'd say no. My crew has been very good, but there's just not enough time in the day. I don't have a big enough crew or a big enough staff to be able to do that. But putting it out to contractors, the more money that, not just, I keep hearing $1 million, I'm looking for $1 million too. I'm looking for even more than $1 million too if we can do it. The farther I get on catching up with these roads that we've lost in the past, the better off I'll be. If Mike is correct, or Mike Swan, doom and gloom saying we're gonna hit a recession in the next 3 years, then I'll get ahead, and when I hit those 3 years or that recession again, we're gonna fall back behind again. So again, I would take as much money. I wouldn't say just $1 million or $700,000. If I can get $1.2 million or more, that's what I would be looking
You know,
to
the
get.
other thing to keep in mind is that you have a lot of towns, people have been very patient waiting their turn because maybe the condition of the road wasn't as bad as maybe in some other town or maybe whatever, and so some people have been told, yeah, we're gonna do these roads in 2020, and now you got to go back and say, well, it's not going to be 2020, it's going to be 2021 or 2022, and if you have to do that, that's fine, but there needs to be a little precision that way also to let people know when these roads are going to be done. I mean, within a year or two, I would think, you know. Andrea?
That being said, people are very understanding when there is a bigger picture.
Yeah, they are.
We have a bigger picture to present, I think, you know, that definitely mitigates the...
Commissioner?
Just the one last thing I wanted to add was, you know, I've been asked before, why aren't you doing this road or why aren't you doing that road because they're in poor shape. The poor shapes I maintain at least so that they're safe. But if I do a half a mile of a reconstruction, and like I said, I would have on Glen Athol Road, I think I have another one in Bolton, that's Coolidge Hill Road, which really aren't part of this list, but if we can get the extra money, it'd be good to do them. They're poor roads. They're going to remain poor. They're not going to get any worse. They're already in poor shape. It cost me $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 to do a half a mile of road. I can take my 7s that are in fair to good condition and get them back up to a 10 for $100,000 per mile of road. So I'm gaining so many more by doing this, and we're in the long run we're saving money that I can put towards those reconstruction projects. But
We'll continue this discussion. We'll go out to bid. We'll get the prices. We'll have a better sense of what it's going to cost, and as soon as you have that information, Kevin, if we'll bring it back to the committee, or if you need a special meeting, we'll call a special meeting. It's that important. We've kept you all here a long time. Andrea, you have something else? Okay, motion to adjourn. Well, Mr. Merlino.
I have one thing. I know it's not gonna happen, but I just, I happen to be going through my town last couple of days, the snow's melting. And we have a tough time getting rid of brush and trees and everything in the summertime because the DEC stopped us from burning, which was ridiculous. Instead of giving out 30 burning permits, we could have burned in one spot, same thing. I wondered if the administrator or Kevin could write to the DEC or call the DEC. Could we get a waiver on that for 2 months? That's this way, because when this snow melts, all these towns are going to start seeing a lot of brush, and we can't handle it. What we have is a normal year. It's going to be unbelievable in March or April. If the DEC would waiver the burn permit and let us burn for 2 months, I think that's going to help the towns a lot.
I'm sure the commissioner would be happy to do that.
Garrity?
Yeah, obviously,
That way you promoted me?
know that we're in around that park, and there's a ban on all burning in the park until May something.
Well,
So,
you know, we have to get,
I
I
would
don't know,
hope that you wouldn't break the law.
I don't know what the state's gonna do with all of it along the roads, but that's all I ask, the DEC try to get back to the burn permit.
That's why we
For
need
2
to get
months.
the tub grinder, Gene.
The commissioner will take care of that.
All right, motion to adjourn. Mr. Bruno, Mr. Stroud, the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned, everyone. Thank you for your patience.
Not just